With all the challenges I've been doing on my channel, I've driven a lot of kilometers in different vehicles. One thing I've noticed though is that in chapter 5, it seems like the 3 different vehicles can travel different distances. Their dirt bike, for instance, never seems like it runs out of fuel, whereas the car seems like it runs out of fuel almost immediately. Now, obviously this might be from boosting too much, and it's possible that all this is in my imagination, but I wanted to find out for sure. In this video, I will determine which chapter 5 vehicle is the most efficient, the dirt bike, the sports car, or the G-Wagon. In order to test the relative efficiencies of the vehicles, I needed to know 2 things. 1, how far each vehicle could travel on a full tank of fuel, and 2, the size of each vehicle's tank. I ran into my first challenge when trying to determine how far each vehicle traveled. When you finish a match, the endgame stats will tell you how far you've traveled, but it's only rounded to the nearest kilometer. To determine a more precise distance, I outlined a route on the map beginning at Placid Pumps. Through a painstaking process of running from one checkpoint to the next and getting eliminated before I traveled a full kilometer, I was able to determine a very accurate distance estimate for each segment. Once finished, I knew if I started at Placid with a full tank of fuel and made 1 lap around my route, it would be exactly 3,423 meters. I began testing the range of each vehicle. The advantage to starting my route at the gas station was that even if I had to go find a vehicle, I could bring it to the station, fill it up, and then begin the range test. I began with the car and completed the first lap with 34% of my tank remaining. I continued until the tank was completely empty, which occurred just short of the Riviera station, giving a total distance of 5,220 meters. Next, I repeated the same test on the dirt bike. I completed the first lap and still had 36% of my fuel remaining. At this rate, I expected the dirt bike to travel further than the car, and indeed it did. The dirt bike ran out of fuel just as I pulled into the Riviera station, resulting in 5,295 meters traveled. Finally, I filled up a G-Wagon and set off. Based on my experience, I expected the G-Wagon to travel further than the car, but less than the dirt bike. However, when I checked my fuel gauge at the 1 lap mark, my tank was down to only 22% remaining. I was nearly immediately warned of low fuel, and my SUV died on me just past a state station, after traveling only 4,330 meters. Nearly a full kilometer less than either the car or the dirt bike. My next objective was to determine the fuel tank size of each vehicle. I decided to test this in 2 different ways. The first was timing how long the fuel pump took to completely fill an empty tank, and the second was measuring the amount of fuel used from a fuel can. I boosted all the fuel out of a car and found it took approximately 17 seconds to completely refill the tank. Given the maximum allowable flow rate for a fuel pump in the US is 10 gallons per minute, means we dispensed a mere 2.8 gallons of fuel. Next, I used a fuel can to fill the car's tank from empty and found that it took 67% of the can's fuel capacity to fill the car. I also noted that the flow rate of the can is the exact same as the fuel pump. Therefore, we can deduce that the fuel cans in Fortnite hold approximately 4.2 gallons of fuel. I repeated these tests for the G-Wagon and found that the fill time and fuel can usage was exactly the same. However, when I tested the dirt bike, it turns out that you can fill the dirt bike tank in half the amount of time and also uses half the amount of fuel from the gas can. In other words, the dirt bike tank is actually half the size of the G-Wagon or the car. Equipped with these numbers, I was able to calculate the relative efficiency of each vehicle. After converting to freedom units, I found the car's fuel economy is 1.14 miles per gallon. The G-Wagon was even worse at 0.95 miles per gallon, and the dirt bike was the best at 2.32 miles per gallon. Maybe it's time that Fortnite switches to electric vehicles. Subscribe.